Howard Schitz spoke about the Green New Deal during his CNN town hall. Hey, by the way, he hasn't even announced that he's running, and he got a CNN town hall. Tulsi Gabbard isn't even included on many official mainstream media lists as to who's running for president, and she's running for president. 538 had their little infographic with all the 2020 candidates. It included The Rock, and it didn't include Tulsi Gabbard, who already announced that she's running. Howard Schultz has gotten about 27 times the amount of mainstream media coverage than Richard Ojeda, and he had announced. And of course he had to drop out because he's like, nobody's bothering to cover me except like the Young Turks and new media outlets. So what am I going to do? I feel bad raising money from people to run for president when I know that the chance of us actually winning is so low because we can't get any traction because mainstream media has it out for us, has us blacklisted. But Howard Schitz doesn't have to do anything. Just by virtue of the fact that he's a billionaire, he's allowed on air. That's what it is. To steal from a friend, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. So he finds a way to just get on air because, what do you mean? I have money, I have power, and you're going to take me seriously. By the way, same thing happened with Ross Perot. Ross Perot was a billionaire. Remember when he ran in 1992? The only reason he was taken seriously is because he's a billionaire. So even though he's trying to posture as like, me, bro, I'm outside of the system. No, you are like somehow even more within the system than many of the candidates who are running within the two major parties. You're a perfect embodiment of the establishment, even as you pretend like you're against it. So anyway, Howard Schitz spoke about the Green New Deal, and it was just as bad as you'd expect.
Markey and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, do you think that they are being disingenuous with the American people?
When I read the Green New Deal and I try and understand what they're suggesting, I don't understand how you're going to give a job for everybody, how you're going to give free college to everybody, how you're going to create clean energy throughout the country in every building of the land, and then tally this thing up with $32 trillion on Medicare for all. That's about $40 trillion plus. We are sitting, ladies and gentlemen, with $22 trillion of debt on the balance sheet of America. So once again, not that I'm a business person or I'm an economist, and maybe an economist would disagree with me, but I think it's immoral to suggest that we can tally up 20, 30, 40, $50 trillion of debt to solve a problem that could be solved in a different way. It's not that they're disingenuous. I think they're well-intentioned. This is not personal. I just don't agree this is the right way to approach things.
So let me explain why this is unbearable. It is always the Howard Schultz types, the corporate centrist types, who love to talk about how, only in this country could I have made it. This country's number one. But then in the next breath, they say the same shit you just heard right there, which is when anybody comes up with a bold idea to move this country into the future, to create a better planet, to fight back against climate change, to give our people who don't have healthcare, they always say, be realistic. We can't do that. Wait, you were just talking about how we're the best country ever, and it's amazing, and only in this country can somebody make it, and we're number one. And then when somebody comes up with a bold idea, you're like, but never, unrealistic. What's wrong with you? Pie in the sky. Now, what I submit to you guys is this. Do you think that back when FDR did the New Deal, that it was the consensus immediately, and everybody was like, oh yeah, New Deal, wonderful. Everybody in Washington was like, yeah. Seems like an awesome idea, and we're totally for it. No. At the time, it faced tremendous opposition, and there were a lot of assholes out there, like Howard Schultz today, which they scoffed, it is unrealistic, and I don't know if you've checked, but we're in a Great Depression, and that, sir, would cost a lot of money to do a New Deal. Rinse and repeat, man. It's the same shit in every era. You're going to have the naysayers, you're going to have the people say we can't do it, you're going to have people who say it's unaffordable, it's pie in the sky, it's this, it's that. Listen, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. he has a fundamental misunderstanding of economics. He's bought into an Austrian economist worldview, which, by the way, is not the consensus of most economists nowadays, but I would argue that the economists of today, the Keynesians, even they get a lot wrong, and there's a lot of truth in what the MMT folks talk about, and there's a lot of empirical evidence to back up what the modern monetary theory folks talk about. Howard Schultz has unquestionably never even heard of modern monetary theory. So when he goes out there and he does all this deficit fear-mongering and debt scolding, he isn't even aware of the counter-arguments to the positions he just thinks are obvious. And that's like the sign of somebody who's not intellectually curious, is that, listen, when you control your own currency, you can be very flexible with it. Very flexible. In fact, as a general rule, and MMT economists have proved this, public deficits mean private surpluses. So usually when the government is running in the red, the private sector is actually doing well. So we should think about why that is, and then we should ask the question, hey, does it always make sense to want to balance the budget? Is that concern always legitimate? Or sometimes is it perfectly legitimate to do deficit spending? There have been people predicting the collapse of the Japanese economy for a long time because they have a lot of debt. And it simply hasn't happened. Maybe this perception of oh my God, the debt is going to lead to a giant crisis, and the debt in and of itself is a problem, maybe that's a fundamental misunderstanding of economics. And they don't even bother to try to understand the counter-arguments, to try to look at the empirical evidence to see if, hey, maybe the raw number, talking about the raw number of debt makes no sense. Maybe you need to go to the debt to GDP ratio, which is a better measure of how you're doing. And then furthermore, maybe you need to look at not just the numbers, but also massive political instability leads to something like inflation, or helps to lead to something like inflation, when in their mind they just think debt equals bad because debt is the same as a household with debt. It is fundamentally not the same thing. Josh Johnson, who's in a lot of debt and he lives 3 doors down from you, that dude does not control his own currency. Personal finance is a lot different from when you're a sovereign government and you control your own currency. So, point is, guys, the debt fearmongers are bullshitters, number one. Number two, they don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. They've never bothered to try to learn the counter-arguments to their positions. And also, they always trot it out only when it comes to doing shit that helps you. When it's issues of healthcare and education, how can we afford it? A Green New Deal to give people jobs and to fight back against climate change? Don't be unrealistic. So just realize, and they're transparent, these folks are. Has anybody ever deficit mongered over war? No. No, they don't do it. Bailouts for Wall Street? No. It is necessary to save the economy. Why isn't it necessary to save the economy to wipe out student loan debt? I would argue it is. Why is it not necessary from a humanitarian level and a moral level to cover everybody in this country with health care? Because we have 32 to 45,000 people that die because they don't have health care every year. But for some reason, a Wall Street bailout is absolutely necessary. You can't question it. We have to go into debt to do it. It makes perfect sense. But when it comes to actual people and helping them, nope, can't do that. Unrealistic, pie in the sky. And then, I also have to point out, he keeps misleading people on the cost of Medicare for all. He keeps saying, $32 trillion, we can't afford it. If we keep the system as it is, it's going to cost $37 trillion. According to a study from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Medicare for all saves $5 trillion over a decade. So he doesn't tell you that. He tries to give you a big scary number and say, oh my God, we can't do it, big scary number. He doesn't tell you what it would be like if we didn't do it. It's worse if we don't do it. And final point is this. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the Green New Deal. A lot of people have been tweeting me, hey, why aren't you talking about the Green New Deal? Why aren't you talking about the Green New Deal? Because the actual specific Green New Deal is not out yet. It's just the outline. And I don't think the outline is really worth commenting on. I want to see the final product, and I want to see the details in the final product, and then I'm going to talk about it. But all I can tell you to this point is there is a tremendous amount of misinformation out there on the Green New Deal. And everybody's going to need to be skeptical at the shit you're going to read, because there's a lot of people who are twisting shit and they have an agenda. And the agenda is, who is this, dumbass up-and-comer, a bartender girl who doesn't know anything, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Isn't she so crazy? Isn't she so dumb? Haha, look at what she's proposing. This is nonsense. So that's the agenda. And then they work backwards from that. So, for example, there's a lot of misinformation about, and the Republicans are running with this. It's literally now a GOP talking point where Mitch McConnell's fucking talking about it. But they're saying, oh, she's trying to ban cars and ban airplanes. No, she's not. You just made that up. By the same token, there's a fax sheet that was floating around that says, oh, the Green New Deal is going to provide money to people who are unwilling and who are unable and unwilling to work. Well, Shoikat Chakrabarty, the chief of staff, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez both came out and said, that is not true. It's not true. So stop talking about it like it's in the bill. The bill isn't even crafty. It's just the outline of the bill. And there's a lot of shit people are running with that it's just fundamentally incorrect about the bill. And by the way, they were working with groups who floated this idea that I'm about to explain to you right now. Hey, how about if somebody was a coal miner and they worked for 40 years, and now you have some fucking bureaucrat coming along and saying, well, sorry, your job's going to get taken away, and maybe you should, do job training and learn to code or something. How about for those people who have given 40 years of their life and have had a profession, and now their pensions are being taken away from them, how about those people deserve financial security? That's the thing that everybody's mocking, because the way it was written down was people who are unwilling and unable to work. Well, the chief of staff said, first of all, that's not in the bill. Okay, it's just not. Second of all, the conversations people were having, that was the conversation. Coal miner who's worked for 40 years, who had his pension jacked from him, and assholes are stepping up saying, why don't you learn to do this, this, or this? No, how about for that person, those kinds of people, they deserve financial security. So just know there's going to be a lot of misinformation, and they're going to try to... Listen, when something starts gaining traction and is very popular and it threatens power centers, they will stop at nothing to try to crush it. And that includes outright lies. So just know that moving forward. By the same token, you hear all these insane stories about Medicare for all. Oh my God, it's way worse than the private system. What about the wait lines? They flip the truth on its head and come up with insane ideas to try to make you think, oh, obviously fixing our system and doing what every other developed country has done, that's a bad idea. So just have your eyes open for that. And Howard Schitz, the irony will never, not shock me. That these are the same people who say America's number one, and then whenever you propose anything that's bold, they turn around and go, "Oh, we can't do that. That's unrealistic." A lot of people were saying that back when FDR did the New Deal, and guess what? He was right. And people fighting for the Green New Deal today are also right.